new to Overwatch, every year on April Fools, the team likes to make a very chaotic game mode where every hero gets some wacky changes. There is absolutely no balance in this mode, so just enjoy the chaos and the googly eyes, and let's go over what they did to each hero. Starting with D.Va, she realized her micro missiles are a little too micro, so it now fires 2 giant slow moving missiles that will explode in a bigger area.
Eat this Roadhog!
Domina's barrier array will now have some funny designs because it will now randomly select one of the many predetermined barrier array configuration shapes. Each barrier panel health will be increased by 50 and the cooldown will now be 7 seconds only.
Bonk! Go to jail! Bonk! Go to jail!
After Doomfist got yeeted out of the window by Vendetta and usurped as the head of Talon, he will now take it personally and he can now see all active Talon members through walls. Doomfist can now deal and receive 50% more damage from active Talon members. Pop quiz, who are the active Talon members? They are Vendetta, Emre, Sigma, Moira, Mauga, and Freja. Additionally, for his rocket punch, he can now hold the charge indefinitely when it's empowered, and the movement speed is no longer reduced when charge is held for long enough.
You can't get me.
For Hazard, I love how the dev comments just say freak fuel, so instead of a jagged wall, it no longer is a wall spawning projectile, but instead it's just steroids. Hazard enhances himself for 5 seconds, which greatly increases his attack speed, reload speed, movement speed, cooldown speed, and jump speed. The cooldown of this old jagged wall cooldown, which I guess is now called freak fuel, is now only going to be 8 seconds.
Who wants a steak and pork?
For Junker Queen, say goodbye to the shotgun. The scattergun now shoots 7 knives instead of bullets. What? The jagged blade, it now throws your regular shotgun instead of a knife. When impaling an enemy, the shotgun will now fire at that enemy, and after recalling, the shotgun will fire at where your crosshair is when caught by Junker Queen.
Cut!
For Mauga, his overrun can now last forever. However, using it for too long will light himself on fire. While he is on fire from the overrun though, colliding with any enemies will light them on fire as well. We're spreading it around. For his cardiac overdrive, it now makes Mauga's chain guns shoot blobs of lava which explode and instantly ignite enemies.
You can check in, but you can't check out.
For Mei, yes, you heard that right, Mei. She is no longer a DPS in the specialist subrole and she is now a tank in the bruiser subrole. She has an extra 200 shield HP and her player model scale size has been increased by 25%. Additionally, her ice wall has also been increased by 25% in scale. For Orisa, the energy javelin will now launch Orisa herself in the direction of where the javelin is thrown. A little reversal right here. Now for her ultimate Terra Surge, while charging it, Orisa will now ascend into the sky and can move around. Upon unleashing the Terra Surge, Orisa will slam onto the ground below her, triggering its damage on impact. She no longer gets overhealth while using it, and the maximum damage has been reduced to 400.
Check yourself or wreck yourself.
For Ramattra, he is the one Omnic show, a true lone wolf, because his health will be increased from 425 to 500, and his armor will be increased from 100 to 500. Look at his HP. But he will be permanently anti-healed. He is always purpled. He cannot be healed by teammates. However, for his Ravenous Vortex, this ability will now heal Ramattra for 250% of the damage dealt, which bypasses that anti-heal effect, of course. And for his Annihilation Ultimate, it now heals Ramattra for 100% of the damage dealt, again bypassing that anti-heal effect. And the Annihilation will apply anti-heal to the enemies as well.
Agony is hyper-flavored.
For Reinhardt, they say his old nickname was Pin King at his local bowling joint, so for his charge, he will be pinning multiple people at once now. Holding forward or backwards can speed up or slow down the charge speed, and the charge duration has been increased from 3 seconds to 10 seconds.
Have a seat!
For Roadhog, his hook is going to change completely where it no longer pulls enemies, but instead it'll slow, hack, anti-heal, burn, and reveal the hooked enemy for 3 seconds. The cooldown of it will also be reduced from 6 seconds to 4.5 seconds.
Everybody gets scrapped.
For Sigma, his rock, or his accretion is what it's called, will now fire a shotgun volley of smaller rocks, and it has 2 charges. For Winston, he is just strictly unavailable to play in this mode. Why? Because he's in a special reunion on Horizon Lunar Colony. Seriously, you can't play him. If you know what a Katamari ball is, that's what Wrecking Ball is. When he uses his roll, it'll greatly increase Wrecking Ball's size, and he is now unstoppable and will take 30% reduced damage during the roll, but it will move significantly slower. For his grappling claw, if you retract it, it can now launch Wrecking Ball in the direction he's moving.
Collect the little balls to win the prize.
For Zarya, I would say bubbles are pretty cool, right? So Particle Cannon, secondary fire, will now blow explosive bubbles.
Group hug.
For the damage heroes, let's start with Anran here. Fan the Flames will now allow her to fly, because when you're in the air and you use the Fan the Flames, it'll push her backwards in the direction she is aiming. For her ultimate Vermilion Revival, she can now move around while she's dead before triggering it.
Heroes never.
Oh shoot, wrong script.
Caw, you cluckers.
For Ashe, if she shoots one of her airborne dynamites, a new dynamite will be launched upwards from the explosion. Now, can we chain multiple dynamites together infinitely? Yes, you can.
Bob, do something.
For Bastion, I'm going to start with the dev comments. They noticed Bastion was running a bit slow while in turret form, so they replaced his gun with a large fan to hopefully speed him up. So for the configuration assault, and now shoots large wind blasts with limited range, knocking back enemies. Bastion can now move faster while in this configuration instead of moving slower. For Cassidy, in the Wild West, finger guns are seen as a sign of hostility, so every time you say hello in the communication wheel, you will now fire a piercing bullet that inflicts bleeding.
It's 6:30.
For Echo, her primary fire is called Tri-Shot. Tri means 3 projectiles, but this time, each successive shot will increase the number of projectiles fired, creating new shapes for each volley. For her flight, canceling it now will launch Echo in the direction she's moving. And then for her sticky bombs, they will now bounce off of the environment up to 3 times before sticking.
I'm better than you at.
A lot of changes for Emre coming up. First, his base jump height has been increased and his gravity has decreased. For his cyber frag, the projectile physics have now been changed, as you can see. It also now sticks to enemies and it deals more damage when stuck. For his siphon pistol, the projectile speed is increased. It can now headshot, but there's no more lifesteal on it. And it no longer changes Emre's jump behavior. For his quick melee attack, it now deals 60 damage instead of 40, and it will lunge at nearby enemies. It'll also deal critical damage when hitting enemies in the back. This sounds a little familiar. For his ultimate, called Override Protocol, the cost has been reduced by 50%, so it builds a lot faster. It will now only fire 2 heavy rounds, and the rate of fire has been increased. It also no longer grants flight. So with Emre taking all the airspace, Freja is taking a more grounded approach because Freya's regular movement is now 70% slower, but her cooldowns are accelerated by 300% while she is on the ground.
You're so cooked.
For Genji, he has been reworked to be their first ever melee DPS, their words not mine. His Dragon Blade has been moved from his ultimate to now his weapon, and the damage has been reduced from 110 to 65 per slash. Energy Slash is his new ability. When activated, the Genji Dragon Blade will fire large energy projectiles with each slash for a short duration. This is only usable with the Dragon Blade equipped, and it has an 8-second cooldown. For his shurikens, that is now his ultimate instead of his weapon. The shuriken projectile speed is tripled. Primary fire will now continually fire it when held down. Secondary fire will now fire 9 projectiles at a faster rate and in a wider arc. And the ultimate duration has been increased to 8 seconds. For Hanzo, his quiver is a little different now because the sonic arrow has been replaced with what they call a random arrow, and it has a 6-second cooldown. Instead of a sonic arrow, it readies one of the many possible arrows at random into Hanzo's bow, which can be seen before firing by looking at it here.
Sick 'em, boys!
For Junkrat, he now has 3 charges of his steel trap. It no longer has a cooldown and instead costs 50 scrap to place one. How do you get scrap? Well, heroes will drop 25 scrap upon death, which Junkrat can now pick up. Kind of reminiscent of old Overwatch 1 Torb if you played back then.
Everyone stand very still.
Pharah could not compete with the Jetpack Cat, so she decided to ground herself as well, so her hover jets are completely removed. For her rocket launcher, it now has increased self knockback. The more Pharah knocks herself back with the rocket launcher, the faster she moves. And it also has no self damage, so you can do it without penalty.
Try and shoot me. You won't.
Reaper has learned to play peekaboo, so during his shadow step, Reaper now has 6 seconds to choose if he actually wants to teleport there or retreat back to his original position. If he retreats, shadow step cooldown is now reduced to 5 seconds, so you can bait people out.
Happy birthday.
For Sojourn, while at 100 energy, Sojourn's abilities will now consume 50 energy to become energized. What does that look like? Well, an energized power slide will move 100% faster, and it'll trip enemies that Sojourn collides with. An energized disruptor shot will now leave behind 2 smaller energy bursts as it travels. The smaller energy bursts have a 2-meter radius and deal 60 damage per second.
Bye-bye, bad guys.
For Soldier 76, he can now deal massive damage with his biotic field if he places it on an enemy. For his sprint, the final blows he gets in a game will now increase his sprint bonus speed by 25% up to a total of 75% extra. This bonus is lost on death.
Who took my dentures?
Well, one thing you've noticed if you play this mode is that barrels have appeared on all maps. Please ignore them, as the dev comments say. Well, that's because Sombra's new ability is called Disguise, which replaces her translocator. This transforms Sombra into a random object. Sombra can still move while disguised. Doing any action will remove the Sombra disguise. A nice little prop hunt throwback here.
Propaganda is useless.
For Symmetra, the sentry turrets will now automatically deploy around Symmetra, and they'll follow her around wherever she goes. The number of charges has increased from 3 to 4, and the cooldown will be reduced to 7.5 seconds. The damage will also be reduced from 30 to 15.
Superior to RGB.
Torbjorn, more like Torbjorn. Haha, there's 2 of them now, because the second Torb is going to be on top of the Torb, which mimics all of his actions.
Lava!
For Tracer, her blink distance is now 100 meters. Yeah, okay.
Whoa! Whoops!
For Vendetta, her camera is always going to be in third person now, with her aim being totally separate from the players. Vendetta will now automatically lock on to nearby enemies, facing them no matter how the player moves. You can press interact to lock on to the nearest enemy your crosshair is aiming at. For her Palatine Fang though, the overhead damage is reduced by 40% to compensate. For Venture, you can now dig for treasure. When burrowed, you can emerge from burrow and a random pickup will now be dug out of the ground. These can be grabbed by allies as well, and it includes armor packs and health packs.
This is not a drill.
For Widowmaker, you think you're good at aiming? Prove it, because the take aim can now charge up to 150%, and when charging above 100%, the charge rate is 80% slower and the scope zooms in even further.
I'm making popcorn.
For Ana, her sleep dart will now put Ana to sleep for up to 3 seconds, but when she wakes up, she will nano boost herself. The nano boost duration will scale based on how long she was asleep.
Hope this helps.
For Baptiste, his exo boots can now charge up to 4 air dashes. Air dashes are used by jumping in mid-air, and it'll launch Baptiste horizontally in the direction he is moving. The air dash charges do not decay over time.
Everybody shoot through the box. Through the box!
For Brig, she's no longer shield bashing, but she can now be shield surfing, because after bashing, Brig will begin surfing on another shield for 3 seconds, which will increase her movement speed and jump height. Shield bash's cooldown only begins once the shield surfing ends. The cooldown will be reduced to 3 seconds.
Mace to the mace to the mace to the mace to the face!
For Illari, the healing pylon will no longer passively heal nearby allies. Instead, shooting the pylon with your own solar rifle primary fire will reflect the projectile to all enemies in range. Solar rifle's secondary fire can actually now heal the pylon, and when you do this, shooting that pylon with your solar rifle heal beam will reflect that beam to all damaged allies in range. The build time of the pylon itself will be reduced to 0.5 seconds. Illari can throw the pylon further, and the cooldown is always 7 seconds.
SPF 15 is useless.
For Jetpack Cat, Lifeline will now come pre-attached with a wrecking ball that can be used to slam into enemies. Ending your Lifeline will launch the ball at high speeds in the direction it is moving. It now has a 12-second duration, and the cooldown will be increased to 6 seconds. For Juno, the Hyper Ring is now deployed sideways. Allies within the Hyper Ring can now jump higher.
Martian? Always have been.
For Kiriko, her wall climb can now allow her to move along the walls horizontally. After wall climbing as well, Kiriko can re-grab the wall without needing to touch the ground.
Just aim for the head.
For Lifeweaver, he is now a little small guy because his hero model scale size has been reduced by 50%, his shields has been reduced to 25, and his health has been reduced to 75. Therefore, he's a 100 HP total hero now. For the Life Grip, the allies pulled by Life Grip will now be shrunk for 5 seconds after being pulled. The pedal platform scale has also been reduced by 50%, and the health of it has been reduced from 300 to 150. And the Tree of Life scale has also been reduced by 50%, health reduced from 1200 to 600.
If I see even one axe, so help me.
For Lucio, successive jumps off of the floor will increase his jump height up to 5 times. Failing to chain the jumps together will reset the jump height back to normal. When at the maximum jump height, Lucio can actually land on the enemy's head like a Goomba stomp, dealing damage and then bounce back up.
Who wants a billion hit points?
For Mercy, the Guardian Angel can now target enemies so you can fly around the map like crazy. For Resurrect, it's not really a Resurrect anymore because it can only be targeted onto enemies. Using the Resurrect button on an enemy will deal damage while casting, and it ends in an explosion of damage when finished. Mercy will heal for 50% of the damage dealt with the Resurrect button. The cooldown will be reduced to 15 seconds.
Time to connect the dots.
For Mizuki, the Healing Casa will now have 3 charges. Mizuki now wears a hat for each of the charge of the Healing Casa available, so he's wearing 3 hats, yes. Healing Casa will no longer return to Mizuki. While Mizuki has 1 or more charges of his Healing Casa, so if he has a hat on, he cannot be headshot. For his Katashiro return, Mizuki can teleport to his previous location 3 times per use.
Get in the magic circle.
For Moira, the orbs are going to be orbing because the Biotic Orb now requires targeting an ally to cast. The Biotic Orb will attach itself to that targeted ally and move around with them. The damage orb range itself will be increased from 4 meters to 8 meters, and the healing orb range will be increased from 5 meters to 10 meters.
I'll show you, Meta.
For Wu Yang, the Guardian Wave has now been properly adjusted to show how washed the enemy team is. That's their quote here. So that wave can now charge up. It'll empower in size, damage, healing, and knockback.
Hydrate or dihydrate.
For Zenyatta, his secondary fire charge up now has a 6-second cooldown. When he's charging that secondary fire, the orbs will spin around in a circle around Zen, dealing damage and knocking back enemies for up to 8 seconds. When releasing the secondary fire, the orbs are shot out of all around Zenyatta rather than all straight forwards. Secondary fire's damage and knockback will increase with each orb charged, and Zenyatta will move 30% faster while charging the Orb of Destruction, and he will gain 15 over health with each stored orb.
Become unkillable. Some conditions may apply.